Washington, the Justice Department issued new guidance across the government Friday aimed at giving religious groups and individuals broad protections to express their beliefs when they come into conflict with government regulations, including when making hiring decisions. Attorney General Jeff Sessions' directive fleshes out an executive order issued by President Trump earlier this year that had targeted in particular a provision of tax law prohibiting churches from direct involvement in political campaigns, a point that has chafed some evangelical activists. But Sessions' action, long anticipated since Trump's announcement in May, also staked out religious protections for hiring decisions that could threaten those whose sexual orientation conflicts with employers' faith. Except in the narrowest of circumstances, no one should be forced to choose between living out his or her faith and complying with the law, the Attorney General wrote. To the greatest extent practicable and permitted by law, religious observance and practice should be reasonably accommodated in all government action, including employment, contracting and programming. For example, the directive says the Internal Revenue Service may not enforce the so-called Johnson Amendment, which prohibits nonprofits from intervening in a political campaign on behalf of a candidate, in cases involving a religious nonprofit when the same activity would not be enforced against a secular organization. The guidance also reiterates that religious nonprofits may not be excluded from federal grant programs for activities unrelated to their worship, and explicitly states that private businesses are entitled to the same conscience protections as churches. The Justice Department guidance was issued as the Trump administration announced that it would expand the religious exemption for employers who object to providing insurance coverage for birth control because of their religious or moral beliefs. Read more. The Sessions guidance offered strong support for the move, saying that the Department of Health and Human Services should not second-guess the determination of a religious employer that providing contraceptive care to employees would make the employers compliant in wrongdoing. Tony Perkins, president of the Conservative Family Research Council, lauded both actions Friday. After 8 years of the federal government's relentless assault on the First Amendment, the Trump administration has taken concrete steps today that will once again erect a bulwark of protection around Americans' first freedom, religious freedom, Perkins said. The Justice Directive comes just days after a separate Sessions memo concluded that the federal civil rights law does not protect transgender people from discrimination in the workplace. The action reverses an Obama administration policy issued nearly 3 years ago. According to Sessions' memo, the prohibition on sex discrimination encompasses discrimination between men and women, but does not encompass discrimination based on gender identity, per se, including transgender status. The directive effectively rolls back 2014 guidance provided by then Attorney General Eric Holder, which stated that the most straightforward reading of the civil rights law also guards transgender workers from discrimination. James Essex, director of the ACLU's LGBT and HIV project, blasted the transgender justice action as part of an explicit agenda to undermine the civil rights of vulnerable communities. Today marks another low point for a Department of Justice, which has been cruelly consistent in its hostility towards the LGBT community, and in particular its inability to treat transgender people with basic dignity and respect, Essex said.